You know how unpopular you have to be for traditionally cordial and mild-mannered Canadian politics to reward politicians who tell you to kiss their butt? Trump wants to run ads about his own record rather than just letting the next season of Saturday Night Live do it for him. We've got all sorts of numbers, both poll numbers and economic ones. Welcome back to the podcast for the 54% of Americans who regularly vote for progress and want to convince their friends and family members to join our majority.
All right. Well, we are officially in a trade war with Canada.
I felt that. I felt it when it happened.
Yeah. As of Saturday, we have a 50% tariff on about $20 billion worth of goods from Canada.
This has been a long time coming, Ravi. I don't know about you. I've been thinking for a while. When is Canada?
We had to stand up for ourselves.
Gonna get its comeuppance.
Yeah. And then Canada struck back, and they are planning to levy their own tariffs, retaliatory tariffs against the United States after Labor Day. And the Prime Minister Carney said they're going to go dollar for dollar with us. And then you have the most powerful domestic political leader within Canada, who's Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, essentially the governor of the most populous state in Canada. He gave a rather measured response to Trump. Let's check this out.
No, I don't respond to a dictator like President Trump, a bully like President Trump. As I said before, he's the type of guy in school that would take your lunch money one day, take your toque off your head the next day, and then steal your running shoes. But I'm not going to take any advice off a guy that's the king of bankruptcies. And he's actually tariffing his own people, taxing his own people. And I'm going to make sure I communicate through the U.S. media. I'm going to be reaching out to every single governor, every single senator, and every single congressperson. And when it comes to the midterms, I have a message to the Americans. Don't vote in a person that's going to kill your jobs.
Yeah, didn't he go on to say, like, if it were legal, I'd go door to door? I mean, like, Canada doesn't usually throw down like that.
Yeah, they're very pissed. Obviously, essentially what happened, essentially what happened was that we were in negotiations for a while, and the sticking points were as follows. One was we wanted Canada to agree that we had a veto power over all of their trade deals with other countries. Okay. That's number one. Number two was that they have this rule that streamers in Canada, like at Netflix type things, push to the top of their algorithms domestically produced content and content in French language. For some reason, we cared about that because of quote unquote First Amendment concerns, which is ludicrous.
They don't have our constitution in Canada.
Yeah, I wonder if when we're in trade negotiations with Saudi Arabia, for example, we're telling them what content to allow and not to allow.
It's not like American content doesn't dominate already. Did you know that there's actually a law in Canada that broadcasters have to talk about Canadian news a certain minimum percentage? Because if they don't, all they'll talk about is American news because it's so entertaining. It's all anybody wants to see.
Right. And then the third thing here was we couldn't give them an assurance that we wouldn't just renege on this and reverse. So it's like we'd change it right after it's signed. So it seems like some reasonable concerns from Canada here. And I think what Carney is showing is that he's showing a different way. Most countries around the world essentially allow the U.S. to bully them, and then they just try to nickel and dime to get the best possible deal. They hope that Trump runs out of motivation at a certain point. But they're going about this differently. And there's a lot of interesting contours to this. They are yet to really open up the oil industry to these tariffs, in part because there's some interesting secessionist politics within Canada here. But if they decided to do that, this would reach a whole different level. But they are levying tariffs on industries that are targeted in some ways. So for instance, they have a higher tariff on motorcycles, Harley Davidson, for example, than they do on vehicles. Steel and aluminum have doubled to 50%. So they know certain domestic political constituencies, and they like others have learned to target industries that are close to Trump or in red states. And it's fascinating. You know, Trump replied saying that he was going to rename Lake Ontario to Lake America. And I looked this up. Apparently, this is not named, you know, Lake Ontario is named Ontario because I think there's some kind of Native American connection and predated the existence of Canada and the United States, the name Lake Ontario. So this is just stupid. Obviously, for other reasons, it's stupid, but it's doubly stupid.
So Canada is specifically targeting tariffs on goods that are made. Okay, hold on. Let me just make sure I get this right. Canada is specifically targeting tariffs on industries that are close to Trump because of how it will directly affect Trump, which is not unlike how we traditionally sanction countries using economic sanctions that are usually, unlike what we're doing in Iran right now, usually targeted at industries that would enrich or be very closely tied to foreign leaders that we consider adversaries. So Canada is treating this the way we would traditionally treat, say, sanctions on Russia, whereas we would want to choke off financing for Putin and him enriching himself. They're treating us the exact same way.
Yeah, and this is not good for the economy. We'll talk about the economy in a bit. I think in global context, people, you know, countries are starting to show that the United States is weak and in many ways a paper tiger. We're not going to talk a lot about Iran today, but we announced a whole series of economic measures against Iran, which essentially concedes that militarily we don't have many options left. And China is exempt from all of these. And China is or for most of them, and China is the main lifeline to Iran. The United States knows they can't stand up to Iran. Like if you're China looking at everything that's happened here, for instance, the war in Iran, it's laughable that the United States would beat, quote unquote, you know, if we're thinking about this way, China in a war of any kind, whether it's economic or a hot war, if we are getting our butts kicked by Iran right now.
Particularly given that the most likely armed conflict that we would end up against China in would be with regard to Taiwan, which means it would be much like what we're dealing with in Iran, which is we'd be on the other side of the world. And I mean, you talk about a supply line, having a supply line, it's right there for China.
Yep.
They don't have to stretch themselves at all.
The politics of this, I mean, this is evidence that Trump does not have his eye on the ball for the midterms. You think about, so this is from Sahil Kapoor, Canadians buy 41% of exports from Maine and 39% from Michigan. And you could add, for instance, Alaska, Ohio to this mix as well. These are really important trade partners with Canada. And Susan Collins objects to the tariffs. Rogers isn't taking a stance. Yeah, she's concerned. Angus King, who's been on the podcast before, issued a statement saying that Canada could devastate the lobster industry and noted that Maine lobsters could be pinched twice since much of it gets sent to Canada for processing before re-imported to the United States.
Oh, wow.
I mean, unbelievable. I've got to suspect that like Collins is going to try to lobby Trump for some kind of exemption for some of these things. Yeah, I mean, I think those are two of the toughest Senate seats in many ways for Democrats right now. And both of them, at the beginning, like a week ago, I was saying to somebody, I was like, I could see the Democrats winning the Senate in a very unconventional map by losing one of those two states. And I still think this is possible. Losing one of those two states, Maine or Michigan or both, and still somehow pulling together some other states, which we'll talk about in a second. But I'm way more bullish today on those races because of this. Like, I think this is the absolute worst thing Trump could be doing for Republican chances to keep the Senate right now.
Why is he even mad at Canada? Just because they're there, right? I mean, why does a crazy person hate the rain? Because it's there. I mean, I don't even know if that's a saying, but it seems like it fits here.
I think he's a bully and generally saw a mark. I think misunderstood the nature of the Canadian spirit. I think too is I think he wasn't really paying too much attention to it and sent his envoys and basically riled them up. And then when Canada stood up to them, he reacted emotionally. And I think given like that he has been defenestrated in other theaters, he has to show that he's a big tough guy right now and doesn't want this example out there. And then I think Carney, if you remember, gave that speech essentially that we haven't, this was, I think, probably a year ago, that there's like a new world order. I think we played it here on this podcast and gave a rather eloquent speech saying, hey, we can no longer trust the United States to keep the peace in this world and be the leader of the free world anymore. I imagine those things all, I think, piss Trump off. I think he also probably just doesn't like Carney because Carney doesn't kiss his ass in general.
No, I think you've nailed it. I think it's all those
the
things.
Politics here are interesting. He's got over 70% approval rating. And Doug Ford, for people who don't realize, conservative. So this is a unified issue in Canada. And Carney is playing the politics pretty effectively. He exempted oil for now because he's got the secessionist movement up in like Winnipeg or something. I don't know. Canadians don't come at me. I forget which state it is. That's Calgary, I think. And then Montreal is who really cares about this fight over heritage, identity, language. He obviously was speaking to that constituency. I don't know. Let's move to Canada. Seems they're more unified than us right now.
It's too cold in Canada. I can't do it.
Duffy gave the Secretary of Transportation, for whatever reason, was out there talking about this and gave a rather juvenile speech that I'm not going to play here, where he was basically, they don't have a military, their health service is a mess. But nothing, by the way, that had to do with trade, by the way. And he was just mocking them. It's just an embarrassment, honestly. I'm sorry, Canadians, if there are any of you listening.
Also, they have a pretty great military.
Well, they did go to Afghanistan, did they not?
Yeah, I remember seeing him there. I don't remember seeing Sean Duffy. Maybe he was there. Something about his background, I don't know. Isn't he like a real world guy?
Well, yeah, I mean, he's a disgrace to one of the great television shows.
Yeah. Well, I remember seeing the Canadians there.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to read you this tweet from Rick Scott, and I want you to connect the dots here for me a little bit. Florida should never be down in tourism, and it being down for the second quarter in a row is concerning. It means less jobs and less revenue for Florida families. Good thing our next governor, Byron Donalds, cares deeply about this issue. Make sure to vote for him and encourage your friends and family to do so. And then he goes on to talk about all the things Florida has to offer.
I'm guessing maybe he and DeSantis have never been the best of pals.
Yeah. There was something else that came to mind on that too, which is a lot of Canadians go to Florida and a lot of Canadians aren't coming to the United States anymore.
That's true.
We've also been mucking with our visas. I've been, in New York, I get to talk to a lot of people. People come to my neighborhood from all over the world. So my coffee shop, I sit in the morning, every day there's somebody sitting next to me from another country. And I get to talk to people about how much of a pain in the ass it is to come to this country and how uncertain it is. And a lot of people just are deterred by the chaos around our system. It's just an embarrassment. So that's where we are. I think the politics of this are really stupid. We're going to talk about elections in a bit. But before we do that, we've got an event, Jason. You and I are getting together for the first time since the pandemic. This event is going to be in Kansas City on Monday, May 28th. We're going to do half midterm stuff.
You said May 28th.
September 28th. September.
Yeah.
So right in the heart of midterm season, you and I are going to take stock of where we are in the midterms, talk all about our politics. We'll answer audience questions. We're hoping our favorite baker from Kansas will take a break from canvassing in that race across the border and come say hello. And then I'll also talk about the book a bit. And if you buy a ticket to the event, essentially 100% of it, you just get a book, my book that comes out that week.
And you're going to sign it, right? You're gonna stick
I will
around
sign
and
books.
it?
I'll write you guys notes. And yeah, like I know I messaged with so many of you, a lot of people from Kansas City. And I think we have the benefit of low expectations for our football teams this year. So we don't even have to get in a fight about that.
Well, I was going to add, I will pledge to hang out afterwards for the book signing. So, like people come up.
Bring your book, bring your Jason Kander books.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure, I think it's Rainy Day Books doing it, right?
Yeah. We'll probably get some.
They generally have copies of mine for sale if people want it. But more than that, like I did this with Joe Posnanski and Mike Schur like 2 months ago, and they had forgotten to bring my book, which is totally fine. It's not my book event. I don't need my book there. But what's funny about that is I end up sitting at the table with the folks who are signing, and people don't know what to do, so they just have me sign somebody else's book, which I'm fine with. So I'm happy to also sign Ravi's book if you want. I have nothing to do with creating Ravi's book. I've enjoyed reading it, but I'm happy to sign the thing too if y'all want to come out. It'd be great to see everybody.
All right. Well, we have
we'll put the link in the show notes and stuff.
Yeah, we'll put a link there. And if you go to readinvisiblelist.com/events, it'll take you to where you can sign up for that, but also September 22nd in New York, September 27th in Chattanooga, and October 6th in Nashville as well. So come out to any of those events. So that's readinvisiblelist.com/events. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we've got a lot of election news. Tons of very interesting things happening around the country. We also have some new economic data that spells trouble for Trump, and then some dysfunction at the Pentagon when we get back.
I want to take a minute to talk about your parents and grandparents. The Washington Post just reported that Americans over 60 reported $7.7 billion stolen by scammers last year. That's up almost 360% in 5 years. And one of the most common scams is criminals pretending to be from Medicare. These scams work because Medicare is overwhelming. The mailers, the robocalls, the fine print, when everything looks official and nothing is trustworthy, good people get taken. So here's something practical you can do this week. If you're on Medicare or you love someone who is, have one number saved, Chapter. They're the only Medicare advisor that looks at every plan in the country, and they're honest. They're not paid to steer you toward any particular plan. If you're on the right one, they'll say so. It's free, it takes under 20 minutes, and they've saved people an average of $1,100 a year. Call Chapter at 785-310-3391. And maybe forward this one to your folks. That's 785-310-3391 and talk to Chapter. Medicare is one of the biggest financial decisions people make later in life, and the system makes it needlessly hard. Hundreds of plans, endless fine print, and plenty of people whose job it is to talk you into something rather than help you understand it. Good people end up overpaying or on coverage that doesn't fit. Call Chapter at 785-310-3391.
The moment you notice something's off in the bedroom, it tends to stick with you. Most guys sit on it longer than they should, and Hims makes it simple to actually do something about it, but with real treatment options 100% online. Hims connects you with licensed healthcare providers online, giving you simple access to legitimate ED treatment options from home, no awkward appointments, no pharmacy lines. Just complete a simple online intake, and a provider will review your information to determine if treatment is right for you. If prescribed, your treatment ships directly to your door. That includes sildenafil, also known as the generic for Viagra, available through Hims at up to 95% less than brand name versions. And if that option isn't right for you, there are additional treatment options available so you could find what works best for your body. It's straightforward, transparent, and designed to make getting care feel easy. To get simple online access to personalized, affordable care for ED, hair loss, and more, visit hims.com/majority. That's hims.com/majority, hims.com/majority. Not available in all 50 states. Prescription required. See website for details, restrictions, and important safety information. Sildenafil is the generic version of Viagra. Viagra is a registered trademark of the Viatris Specialty LLC. Hims is not affiliated or endorsed by Viatris. Ever fall head over heels for a couch online only to see the price and feel personally attacked? Like, why does this rug cost more than my car? That's where dupe.com comes in. It's a genius tool. It helps you find high quality, budget friendly versions of the expensive pieces you've been eyeing. It's a stupid easy to use. Just go to dupe.com and paste any product URL or upload a photo, and bam, it shows you lookalikes that won't drain your savings account. And these aren't shady knockoffs. A lot of the time, they're made in the exact same factories, just sold under a different name with a much less scarier price tag. So that $6,000 cloud couch that influencers are always lounging on, well, Dupe will probably find something similar for a fraction of the price. Same vibe, same plushiness, but you don't have to sell a kidney. It's totally free, dangerously addicting, and blowing up on TikTok for good reason. So if you've got expensive taste and a very inexpensive budget, dupe.com is your new best friend. Dupe.com is not just about furniture either. It works for fashion, shoes, jewelry, and more. So instead of giving you a bunch of sponsored results and ads disguised as recommendations, Dupe digs through the options and tells you what's actually good, what's overpriced, and even what to avoid. For the first time in a long time, online shopping actually feels like something honest. Somebody is being honest with you about the decision. So using dupe.com is insanely simple. Just go to dupe.com and paste any product URL, upload a photo, and it instantly will show you similar items for way less. There's also an app and a browser extension if you want to make it even easier. No account needed, totally free. Start saving money with dupe.com today. All right. From here on out, most of our stuff is going to be election centered. We could talk for hours about this. I had a good time listening this morning to the Hacks on Tap guys, who gave like a pretty good tour of all the different races. And there's so much to talk about, but I think the starting point is that structurally, something to keep in mind is that Democrats are trending very well in direct side spending. And for listeners, this means that like we're raising money into our actual candidate committees really well this cycle. And Republicans are raising a lot of money into their political action committees and candidate committees. And this has a few implications that we're going to go through here and talk about in the weeks and months ahead. But the starting point is that what the richest and most powerful committees in the Republican Party are controlled by Trump himself. Now, this is bad news if you're a Republican trying to win this cycle for two reasons. Number one is Trump may hold on to most of this money so he can, spend it on himself after he leaves the White House.
It feels like it's possible.
Possible, yeah. And, given how stupid our election laws are, he could spend it on all kinds of things, so I think that's very likely. And I think whatever bone he throws to his party, he gets a say in how it's spent. And the Atlantic had a very juicy story here, and I apologize for I think it was 3 reporters in the byline. And essentially reporting on meetings in which Trump is pushing everybody to say, look, let's spend this on rehabilitating my standing with voters.
Naturally. I mean, that makes perfect sense.
Jason, I thought about this and I was like, you know what? This does feel like the wrong move, but it's not insane. And here's why it's not. I mean, insane.
It's not the worst move. It's just also not the best move.
It's not the best move. The best move is definitely targeted stuff to races. That's like, okay, this basically in order to outperform your candidate, this because you outperformed Hillary in 2016, you have to make it about you. And then also about your opponent, and you have to almost distance yourself from the national narrative. Trump is trying to do sort of optics. They call it environmental lift ads. And it's not super crazy, right? Like, because, when we talk about how bad this environment is for Republicans, we talk about how low Trump's approval is. So if you're going to lift Trump's approval, that would help the candidates theoretically. I just think it's a incredibly inefficient way to do it. And I suspect he's pushing this for reasons other than his own electoral standing, or the Republicans' own electoral standing.
What's interesting about this is that this is sort of a classic difference, actually, in the way Democrats and Republicans approach, particularly midterm elections, because Democrats, going all the way back to Bill Clinton, have had an approach of like, hey, look, if you need to, I'm sure it went back further than that, but that's just like when I became politically aware, because when Bill Clinton was running for re-election, I was like 15. So I remember, and so then I was 17 in his first midterm or his second midterm. Like, so I kind of do remember people being given license by the president to create distance. Like, I remember there were plenty of people who voted for his impeachment. There were at least a few Democrats who either voted for or were amenable to, censuring him, that kind of thing, who, the party did not cut loose. In fact, I'm sure there were cases where the party was like, you got to do this in order for you to be able to win re-election. So, and that's happened all the way through. Obama let people distance themselves. Biden kind of weirdly didn't need it in 22, but it's happened. Republicans traditionally take sort of a, hey, we're all in the same boat approach, and they just try and grow the brand. The difference here is that Trump is uniquely unpopular right now.
Yeah, historically.
And on top of that, it's not just like, hey, let's all hang together and build this brand and keep it high. He has shown no interest in building the brand at any point. It's always just been about him. So it's not like he has been doing things to make Republicans more popular or less unpopular. He's just investing in making himself less unpopular, which we don't know is going to necessarily raise the Republican brand. And also, frankly, it's probably too damn late to make much of a difference.
Yeah. Well, I think of this as like, you know, in football, there's often the question, like if you were like, there's a question like, do you go for it on 4th down or something? Right. And the question I always ask myself is, if I were the other team, what would I be more scared of? Right. And I often don't want the other team to go for it on 4th down. I want them to punch that field goal or whatever, almost always. And in this case, I am the other team and I like this move. Like, first of all, I don't want them to spend at all.
Because it's 4th and 30.
Right. Yeah. I don't, you know, I actually think we'll get the favorable outcome for Democrats on this one. Now, there are all kinds of other Republicans who are pouring tons of money into all kinds of races right now. And, you know, Trump can't really mess with a lot of that money. So we're still going to face an avalanche of spending in a lot of these races. But at least for now, we have a little bit of reprieve this week because there was this 4th Circuit ruling that, you know, essentially if you're the traditionally campaigns, the direct side campaign, meaning the actual campaign that's run by the candidate.
Hold on, Ravi, before you go to that, I'm reading your notes here and they come from that article. And I don't think we can underline enough the 4th and 30 nature of this decision, which is that this line, the solution Trump settled on, according to 3 people familiar with the meeting, was to lean into the Democratic strategy of focusing on himself.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
yeah. Well, okay. There's also this other line, which is, and I'm quoting from the article, before Trump's first midterm election as president, this is 2018. We were both very involved in helping candidates there. The Pew Research Center found that 51% of the country believed that the economy was doing well, including 13% who described the economy as excellent. By July of this year, only 22% felt that the economy was doing well, and only 3% described it as excellent. That's the 4th and 30.
And that's 4th and 99. I mean, because the economy is, if we had to isolate a single greatest contributing factor as to how he won in 2024, it was people were not satisfied with the economy.
Yeah.
And now they're like, oh, it's a lot worse. And he's like, let's make sure to tell them how involved I've been.
Well, he said, I think this was in relation to Graham in South Carolina. He basically was saying, number one, he was saying he had 50% approval on the economy. He was quoting a poll that said that, which he just made up because.
But you know, Trump knows things are bad.
Yeah.
When his made up version has half of America thinking he's doing a bad job.
Yeah, it was incoherent. And then he was like, well, it's really 30 points more, which obviously it was in the 30s. So even if we gave him 30 more, it's still whatever. But then he said, he basically went on to say the economy is actually doing well, which is, this is the whole thing they criticized Biden over, was that Biden was trying to sell the economy constantly. And it's the stock market's doing well. It's all the same moves, except even less coherent, which, if you could believe it, less
coherent and far less evidence for it.
Yes. Even, you know, Biden, you know, they took a while for them to get around to it, but they were pretty contrite at a certain point. And some of the numbers were shifting in their direction, but the perceptions were baked in. Now, as I was mentioning, there's this ruling from the 4th Circuit, which still could be appealed to the Supreme Court. So, like, you know, we don't know what's going to happen here, but essentially direct side campaigns. So the candidate committees, the candidate campaign themselves get favorable rates traditionally when they're booking advertising. In some cases, this is like a 50% discount, right? So it's incredibly important, this discount. And there had been this sort of murky area now where the committees, because of certain jurisprudence that we need to go into, the independent expenditures, i.e. the things that Republicans are raising tons of money into, we're getting the same discount. But then now the Democrats challenged this. A 3-judge panel of the Fourth Circuit ruled that the low-cost ad rates do not have to be made available to political parties. And so this is a big deal because if it stands, essentially cuts in half the spending power of said committees that we're talking about.
It is a strategic win for the Democrats. It also, frankly, is a huge financial win for those selling the ads. I mean, for the cable news channels, for the broadcasters, certainly for local television. If you are in the business of trying to keep local news on the air, this means you get to charge in that like basically August to November timeframe every 2 years when it's like wall-to-wall ads on local news and on local sports. You get to charge, like, I mean, when you average it all out, it's probably going to be like 40-50% more for the same space.
Yeah. And, you know, I at some point I'll talk about this, but I told you this offline. I'm running an independent expenditure for a race that I think the audience will find very interesting. And this actually hurts me. I have to raise twice as much money for this thing, but it's good in the grand scheme of things. Like, I welcome this.
Yeah, for the record, Ravi told me about this the other day so that we wouldn't talk about this race.
Yeah. So, or at least we could
to each other.
We're allowed to talk about it in a kind of analysis way. We just
but not to whatever limited extent I'm involved on the other side of it, which is a very limited extent.
Only to say we can't coordinate in any way. So Talarico, I'm going to go through a couple races here. I think the map for the Democrats is pretty sizable. So Texas is looking very doable here. So Nate Silver reported that as of June 30th, Talarico had raised $17.5 million in individual contributions from within Texas compared to $7.6 million for Paxton. So it's 2-1 in home state. We just got a poll from UT Texas that found a ton of undecideds, but also found Talarico, you know, within the margin of error, essentially tied between Talarico and Paxton, with Talarico 42 and Paxton 39. But the Libertarian candidate garnering 3%, which could be significant. And there are other races where this could also happen, Kansas being one of them, where the Libertarian candidates are polling in the low single digits enough to really tip these races. And Talarico ran this ad. Are you familiar with this pen?
Yes,
story?
I was gonna ask you what you thought.
I was gonna play it on air, but so Ken Paxton, you know, former, you know, he was the attorney general, he's a lawyer. Apparently, when he was going into a courthouse, some guy
and also is like, it's pretty well established that a big part of his narrative is corruption. I mean, he's been he's been indicted, ad. He's been impeached by the Republican state legislature, and this, can I just say, I think this race is going to be kind of the ultimate test of how bad of a dude can you be and still be carried across the line in a Senate race, because people are voting so much more partisan in Senate races than in gubernatorial races. I really think this is going to really test this. So go ahead.
This is my favorite ad of the cycle so far, and actually I should have played it. But so the background here is that there's a local lawyer who had a Mont Blanc, I don't know how to say it, Mont Blanc pen, very expensive pen. I think like a couple $100, maybe over $1,000.
I think they said like $1,000 pen in the ad, I think.
That his wife had given him. And they were going through security to get into the courthouse. If you've ever been to a courthouse, you know what I'm talking about. It's like going into an airport. And then the pen disappeared. So he reported it to security. They looked at the video, and lo and behold, the lawyer behind him, when Ken Paxton stole the pen, and so they had to go.
Hold on. The closed circuit camera footage, you see there's nobody really standing around. You see Ken Paxton walks over to the area where stuff is sitting that has like gone through and got kind of left behind, right, from it. And you can see him sort through as if he's looking. When you first see it, you're like, oh, he's looking for something of his. And then you see him take the thing, put it in his pocket, and walk off.
Yeah, so Jeremy's going to load it. Yeah, Jeremy, go for it. I think this is too good to not play.
He said he needs like 30 seconds.
So as he's loading it, So the resolution here is that they had to approach Ken Paxton and get the pen back, and then the gentleman, the lawyer, did not press charges against Paxton. But what I like about this ad is, first of all, I'm a big fan, and I'm in the middle of discussions about this now, about getting beyond some generic, like they're not for you, they're corrupt,
Right.
blah, 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 but tying it into something that people will
Relatable.
remember. Yes.
People will remember, and it's relatable because it's like when for a regular person, when you're told so-and-so used their funds in the campaign finance, whatever, you hear that, you're skeptical of every claim made, and you're just going to go like, okay, well, they all do it. Da, 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 da. This is like, hey, everybody's been through a metal detector, and most people don't go back and steal valuable things. So, I mean, anyway, I think it's good to go. You want to play
Let's play it.
This is Ken Paxton, and this is Ken Paxton stealing someone's $1,000 pen. Here's what happened. The incident happened at the Collin County Courthouse, the same courthouse where Paxton would later be indicted for investment fraud. Paxton walked up to the trays next to the metal detectors, rummaged through them, and came across someone else's expensive Mont Blanc pen. He decided to take it for himself. The pen belonged to Joe Joplin, a local attorney who'd accidentally left it behind. It was a special gift from his wife. When Joe realized it was missing, he contacted courthouse security. This is the footage they pulled. Ken Paxton, on camera, stealing this man's pen. After the police got involved, Joe got his pen back. He could have pressed charges, but he decided against it. Because Joe's a nice guy. He'd never take someone else's pen. But he also hasn't forgotten who took his.
Hi, I'm Joe Joplin, and I endorse James Talarico for the United States Senate.
Vote for James Talarico. He won't steal your pen.
I love it so much, and what I like to think about when I watch that ad is the opposition researcher. First of all, major props to the opposition research team, whether it's on Talarico's campaign or an independent, whoever came up with this. I like to think about the moment that footage was presumably emailed to them. I would imagine as a result of like a FOIA request or whatever the Texas version of that is, and they opened it up and they started to watch it. That must have been a truly joyous moment to realize.
So efficient too. Like I love the line, the same courthouse that you'd be indicted for security.
Beautiful. They don't need to over-explain. Just happen to be the same place,
nice.
Man. And it's a life lesson, folks. It's like karma, man. Like whether you're running for office, whether there's a job you want, like don't be a jerk. Don't take the shortcuts. Don't steal things. You see that pen you want to take, you don't know how it's going to come back to you.
It's unbelievable. And the reason why I like this is it's just, I think it's just so relatable, like, I just think that people know what this is, what kind of person we're talking about here, and they'll remember it when they have to go cast a vote. And if it's just like a 1% here or there, like that's the kind of anecdote that'll stick in your head.
One more thing about this race. When we think about electability and candidates, oftentimes what happens is we tend to think about it in terms of like what makes sense on paper, sort of in a vacuum, right? So it becomes, well, what would be good? People start just coming up with like demographic things and whatever. And what they don't often enough think about is who is going to be the perfect matchup for the actual opponent. Now, in this case, this race started out, it seemed like it was at the very beginning likely that it would have been Cornyn, right? Cornyn, however you say it. And so you can't really say like the people of Texas were like thinking about Talarico matching up against Paxton, but it's a lesson if you are going to make electability one of your considerations, which I don't think we should that often. I think you should vote for who you like. But if you're going to do that, you got to think about what is it about your candidate's profile and demeanor and narrative that is going to match up in a way that brings out what people dislike about the person on the other side. And this is a perfect example of that, because for whatever people think about Talarico, and clearly the Republicans are working very hard to have Texans think that he's out of touch with Texas and all these different cultural ways. None of them think that he's like a bad guy. They all think he's like a good kid, and they may disagree with him on stuff, and maybe even they've been convinced to think he was naive or too radical or whatever. But none of them are like, he would steal your pen.
Right.
And so it's kind of a perfect perfect matchup there.
Well, in taking stock of the map, this is a tweet courtesy of Bill Scher. He said, here are the averages of August polls excluding internals. So, and this is Senate races. So North Carolina, D+9. So that's Cooper killing it. Ohio, D+6. Brown.
Yeah,
Maine,
Brown
D+2.
Special.
Yeah, Maine +2. Alaska +2. Michigan +1.8. Texas D+1. Iowa R+3. So just based on those states alone, what he said is he says, I wouldn't assume Abdul is done, but based on this data alone, there's a path. And he says North Carolina, Ohio, Maine, Alaska, Texas without Michigan. We'll talk about the Michigan race in a second. Obviously, we're not saying Abdul is done by any means. That race, I think, is still neck and neck. But there's also Kansas. There's also Nebraska. I also think what happened with Graham may put South Carolina on the map. And then, people are starting to talk about Mississippi too. In an environment like this, we don't know what's possible because we've never seen a president this unpopular before. So I think we've got some stuff on the map here.
Such a shame. For the president, you want to talk about this Dan Sullivan's business?
Yeah, I mean, just a fun little story here. We've got 2 Dan Sullivans on the ballot in Alaska, and I think for people who love to complain about how Democrats don't play hardball here, we've got a ton of races where we got libertarians on ballots, and now we've got 2 Dan Sullivans, and there was a lot of litigation to ensure that this could happen. So you've got a retired teacher who is challenging Dan S. Sullivan. So you have Dan J. Sullivan challenging Dan S. Sullivan, and Dan S. J. Sullivan won a spot on the ballot because it's like this ranked choice or whatever. So I think there are 4 people on the ballot allowed to be on the ballot come November, and so there are 2 Dan Sullivans. This will help. I think Peltola is running a great campaign either way. This just is a little bit of extra spin on the ball, which I enjoy.
Interestingly, I think probably by the time they go to the polls, people who want to vote for Dan S. Sullivan will know that it's Dan S. because Dan S. Sullivan will have spent so much time communicating with them about it. But that's the point.
Yeah,
is that he's gonna have to spend his time making sure people know his middle initial,
right?
Which is not really the message most candidates want to head into election day focused on.
Right. Well, the Michigan Senate race has had a lot of action over the past week, and so we'll go through a couple of items here. Number one, obviously, when Abdul Al-Sayed and Haley Stevens fought it out in the primary, AIPAC was a huge question. Rogers is pulling an interesting move here where he's leaking to media outlets. It seems like Axios is everybody's favorite outlet to manipulate. And this is a courtesy of Axios. Allies of Mike Rogers, Michigan's GOP nominee for U.S. Senate, have asked AIPAC not to advertise on his behalf, triggering a rupture with the powerful but polarizing pro-Israel group. So that's how they reported it. This is what Axelrod said about that very tweet. He said, if I were Mike Rogers, I would welcome this scoop about this rupture with AIPAC, which has made itself a toxic political brand through its huge heavy-handed interventions in 10 primaries. But you can pretty much bet that many of those dollars will be redirected to a pro-Rogers super PAC in this race versus Abdul Al-Sayed, as the Rogers camp apparently has suggested. Rogers wants to turn down the cake and eat it too. That's my read on this too, is that they know AIPAC is not going to listen to them, but now they're going to try to be like, I asked them not to, and try to seem like they're independent.
Axe is totally right. But here's what's interesting about it is that our assumption, the sort of mainstream assumption from the beginning about Al-Sayed, or really any, I would say, Muslim candidate who presents in a Muslim way with a Muslim name like that, there's always sort of an assumption that it's going to be a more difficult road for Democrats. And I'm sure that there's truth to that. It's probably easier to be named, John Smith or whatever in general. But the fact that Rogers feels he has to do this means that it is not necessarily, like, particularly Abdul's position on Israel is clearly not necessarily the disadvantage that a lot of people on the Republican side would want us to believe it is, if Rogers thinks it's to his benefit to distance himself from AIPAC. If otherwise, he'd be leaning into it.
Yeah, I think in Michigan, it's always like a game of inches, right? So when I think you're in Michigan, if you're Rogers, what you need to do, you're not going to win a single of the Dearborn, all that kind of crowd, right? So you take that off the table. Trump did win more than anybody would have ever expected of that crowd, the Arab American communities in Michigan. But you have two sort of audiences you need to keep on your side here. One are the Bloomfield Hills. There's a huge Jewish communities in that area, the suburbs. He's going to win a lot of those people, most of those people who have like an axe to grind with Abdul anyway. There's very few of them that are sort of up for grabs.
Hold on. That's a good point, because in my experience, as a Jew who is political, the part of the Jewish community that is willing to vote Republican over Israel has, like in this moment, has sort of already crossed that Rubicon and decided a year or two ago that like they're out on the Democrats for now anyway. So to your point, like it's not like people have made up their mind about what they think about Netanyahu, what they think about the war with Iran. Like it's not an issue where people are like, well, I was on the fence, but I'm a Jew, so I'm getting. That's not how it's going. Like the Jewish community is like the rest of the country right now. A lot of folks are really upset about what has gone on with regard to the Netanyahu government, and then a lot of folks are not and go the other way, but they've pretty much dug in at this point.
Yeah, or they're upset at Netanyahu, but they're also upset at Abdul, right? So they're like, there are a bunch of people, I hear from a lot of people in that area right now, and there are, like, I've mentioned this before on the pod, like, there are a lot of people who I have never heard talk about voting for a Republican before who tell me they're
really
vote for
that's
Rogers.
Interesting.
Now, and but Rogers does what he needs to do with that group, because he's not changing his Israel policy. He's just saying he's not going to take this AIPAC money. Now, what he does have concern about is the sort of Tucker Carlson wing of the Republican Party, which, although is nowhere near a majority, could shave off a few percentage points if he appears too cozy with this entity. Now, do I think this is enough? I don't know. I mean, I don't know enough about how that group votes. And, I think the biggest risk to him is that they don't show up at all. And so that's what he's dealing with, right? So he's trying to have his cake and eat it too. Abdul walked into, or was pulled into, his own controversies this week. He was all over the cable news all week. He had this interesting back and forth with Jesse Waters. I was listening to Axe and Murphy talk about it, and they were rather critical of the campaign right now, because their sort of take on it is he's trying to like sort of be too cute with these sort of sound bites that play well to the left, but he's not sort of shoring up his sort of standing with independents right now that he's going to need. That was their read on it. I haven't watched any of those clips, so I don't really know. But one thing I do know is that there's a lot of defense right now, and I'll talk about some defense and then some really interesting offense that I'm seeing from Abdul. So the defense is that Piker, which obviously we've gone a million rounds on this podcast about, Abdul campaigned with Piker the day before, or in the days before the primary. And so there's been this big push from Rogers to attach Abdul to Piker. Piker made some statements that I'm not going to go into exactly what they were here, but half the internet seems to have interpreted as meaning like that he was suggesting that Jews deserved violence, Jews generally, because of Israel. And then half the internet says they were taken out of context and that he wasn't inviting that violence.
I don't know what the comments were, but let's say they were either really bad or really dumb, because I don't even know but if that's the split and no one's like, no, he's right.
I had a good debate with a bunch of people in my life about this, and I'll just leave it at that. Needless to say, not helpful. And tons of members of Congress have come out, and including Alyssa Slotkin, the home state senator, a Democrat, came out and a pretty blistering repudiation of Piker. This is all not good for Abdul, because then Abdul gets pulled in. He has to make a statement. He gave a statement that really didn't really say too much about Piker himself and was kind of general. So a lot of people didn't like it. Some people said it was a step in the right direction, but defense, right? And that was like a big sort of distraction this week. So that is not great. It's early enough but that he can kind of move past this if he makes the right moves. And in talking about what the right moves are, well, there's twofold. Number one, Tim Miller made a good point, which is, Mike Rogers has been keeping terrible company, including Donald Trump himself. And we need to have an even hand about this. And I think that's right. Like if Abdul has to explain his associations, which I think is totally fair, then Mike Rogers has to explain his associations. And starting with the president of the United States, those associations are pretty terrible. And so that's one. Number two is he's got to pivot to an economic message. And I heard him say something very interesting that I think could be the cornerstone of a winning message in this campaign. Let's listen to this.
It is easier to make a second billion in this country than to make a first million.
Wow.
And that's a problem. So to me, I'm just like, listen, man, like, what if I tax a billionaire their wealth at 8%? You know what they still are?
Still a billionaire.
Still a fucking billionaire. Your kids are going to be rich. It's okay. Like, you're going to be okay.
It's a good line because I think most people want to be millionaires. You and I talk about this all the time. America is aspirational. Everybody, believes they're going to be a millionaire one day or really wants to be one. So he's speaking to that. So he's not saying like, I'm here to punish you for success. I'm here to keep that lane open while taxing. I think one could debate, wealth taxes forever and whether that's the right mechanism or not. But I think this is what this is what we need to hear. And he's got to dig himself out of this defense. And I think the easiest way to dig yourself out of defense is to be very clear and very quick, and then to just pound this economic message. The one clip I saw is him talking about circumcision with Jesse Waters, and I'm not sure if that's Jesse Waters' fault or Abdul's. I don't know how they got into that discussion.
I'm sure
yes,
credit to Abdul. I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's what Jesse Waters was talking about, like that morning before he went on air. Anyway, like that's what he wanted to talk about.
But let's just get more of these clips.
One clip, by the way, from the Jesse Waters thing, where Abdul was saying, "Look, man, you keep saying I'm talking about this stuff. You keep asking me about it. I want to talk about the cost of groceries and stuff like that. You're just asking me all these other questions." Like,
right. So there you have your answer. So this is what I think will win him the election. If he can pound this message,
that can win a lot of people the election. It's a great message and a completely accurate point.
Yeah, and the tariffs, I think, give him a little bit of extra cushion right now. So let's roll, keep moving. And I want to say, I think Tim was right. Like, I think you either have to give both candidates the scrutiny of their associations or neither. I personally think associations matter to a certain extent, right? It depends on what those associations mean. If it's who your pastor was, like Jeremiah Wright, at some point, it's of limited use. If it's somebody who you're campaigning with as a surrogate, or the president who you take orders from, in the case of Mike Rogers, even more important than anything else, then yes, like the president who's tariffing your state into economic ruin, that seems relevant to me.
Well, look at the way Trump talks about everything. I mean, he's like if you put a hairpiece on a Twitch stream. I mean, he's that made into human form.
Well, let's go through some quick hits here. So we got some inflation data this morning. Prices rose 3.3% annually in July. As with anything, it's a kind of a mixed picture in many ways, but certainly was not good news for the Trump administration or for our economy. They keep saying they were going to eliminate inflation. They've been saying he promised all kinds of things we don't need to go through here in the general election. Didn't get there. John Anzalone, the pollster, also tweeted that U.S. consumer confidence dropped in August, and he posted a graph about it. That's also not great news. So, and then you have the Treasury Secretary spending $1 gazillion to buy up bonds, which essentially bond yields are a signal that the market is concerned. And the Treasury Secretary is basically trying to put lipstick on a pig and buy up bonds to depress the signal that our country is in trouble. If you remember during the tariff fights, that was what spooked Trump, was the bond market. And so that's why he temporarily backed down from some of the tariffs back then, is because the bond market was haywire.
It's like when corporations do buybacks
of
their own stock. You're trying to juice things.
Yeah, and even in that case, it's even better story because sometimes a corporation will buy back its stock because it believes in itself. That's at
Right.
least their
Yeah,
story.
that's fair.
They're
Yeah,
telling
yeah.
themselves.
Yeah.
Now, whether that's bullshit or not, I don't know. But yeah, but
Depends on the situation.
yeah. Now, okay. Hegseth. I mean, I don't know how much detail we need to go into here because you know the military better than I do. But the New York Times had an interesting story about how Hegseth has been firing tons of senior officials. There's a vacancy in the Army Chief of Staff, which is the service's top officer.
It's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, tons of training jobs. They talk about how there are 4-star generals. Like we have the highest vacancies of 4-star generals we've had in a long time. All the sort of key jobs, a lot of key jobs that are relevant to the Iran war are being left empty, and that we also have diminished stockpiles of weapons. And it's just a mess over at the Pentagon.
Well, I mean, there's a reason that you would strategically choose to have a bunch of billets for 4-star generals and flag officers, so admirals too, vacant. And it is because you don't want people who have the gravitas and the time and grade and the opportunity to stand up to you with any authority or credibility, right? Like you leave those blank because you want to do those jobs. And I don't think we want Trump and Hegseth doing those jobs.
Yeah. Well, here's our moment of Zen. This is a video that this is a gentleman, I think his name is Jason Selvig, who goes around, I think, doing sort of these interviews with people out in the world. He interviewed a Trump supporter, and I thought this was a rather amusing and disturbing video.
Were you all in favor of the cuts in USAID?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Everybody should have a voter's ID.
No, the aid operation that for countries, vaccines and food for impoverished countries.
Totally against vaccines. Well,
You're
against.
You're against vaccines?
Absolutely, 100%.
All vaccines?
Well, every single one of them, they're poison.
All vaccines are poison?
Yes, they are. Yes,
What about polio vaccine?
there hasn't been a case of polio in how many years? Since 1960?
Since the vaccine.
Yeah.
That's great. Hey, look,
Unbelievable.
that lady knows what she stands for, Ravi.
Well, okay, one for us. I was down in New Orleans. I teach a writing class called Analog that meets every Wednesday, and there's actually a lot of our class members of our class are listeners to this podcast, so I found them through this podcast, and so we had an in-person meeting. It was really wonderful. New Orleans is cool in the summer. I mean, it's freaking hot, but it was really cool because it's quieter and less tourists. And it's a good time to mention this because I decided we're going to do another cohort next year. So people can go to my website, which is ravimgupta.com/analog and apply. This is the first time I think I'm mentioning it anywhere. So you could apply now. I'll accept people on a rolling basis. And essentially it's a writing class for people writing books or any other sort of long form works and want to finish. The whole emphasis is on finishing. And we've met every single Wednesday this entire year, and then just met in person. It was a ton of fun.
That's awesome. I was thinking about what I was going to talk about for like one for us. And I had kind of this perfect little Sunday, despite Diana being gone, like a perfect Sunday with the kids, which is Diana had to leave early Sunday morning for a speaking gig or like mid-morning. So we like hung out with her sister, so my sister-in-law, and like kids' cousins, and it was this great morning. But the day started with True woke up early. He's decided he's really into fishing. He got my old fishing rod from my parents' house like a week ago, and he was like, I'm fishing now. So
do you live somewhere where you could walk to fish?
Yeah, there's a park with a pond that's stocked
yeah.
not too far from us. And look, my thing did the thumbs up. So anyway, and so he decided he got into it. And with the way True is, just like his parents, when he's into something, he's like all the way in. So he starts watching YouTube videos about how to do it and everything. We go to Walmart the night before, we get him, a lure and all that stuff. And so he wakes up early, and it reminded me of my childhood, man. Like because I grew up a little bit out, in the country sort of, and like in the exurbs. And so he did what he put his fishing rod like on his back and like a little bag, and he got on his bike and he went down the street, and he like FaceTimed me, and he's like, Dad, I caught one. And he caught a fish within like 30 minutes. And then he's like, well, what do I do? It was really adorable. So then they come back, play with the cousins. And then I'm like, let's go to the Royals game. So the three of us, we go, we just walk up to the gate, we buy our tickets, we go, we sit. Bella wore a cheerleader uniform, and she was cheering really loud and doing like the Royals cheers, and she got the whole section going. And then like a couple things happened in the game that were amazing, and I've got this great video of them doing it. Our whole section afterwards like loved her. We come home. Drew's like, I want to do more fishing. So the three of us go to the park and we fish. She catches another fish. Like, it was just kind of this like perfect little Sunday. And then it was just people who have young kids will know, like, it was a unique day where I spent the entire day with the kids running all over town doing stuff. And I don't think I snapped at anybody once. And that's kind of a sweet spot that doesn't happen a lot. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, she travels a lot for these speeches, right? So you're often handling everybody.
Yeah, I average almost 2 days a week, just me at home. And it's, of course it's interesting because it's back when I was, on the road doing politics at, 100 miles an hour. It was like rare that I was home.
Yeah.
And now it's the reverse. I'm the constant presence.
That's good.
Yeah,
teamwork.
It's good. So let's plug this live event last time.
Okay, one more time. Yes. So we're doing an event on September 28th, Monday, 7 to 8 p.m. And if you go to Eventbrite, you could find it easily. It's organized by Rainy Day Books in Kansas City. If you just search Majority 54 Live or any of our names, you could also go to readinvisibleList.com/events. And you can see that event as well as New York City event, Nashville event, Chattanooga. We'll put links in the show notes as well to this. Come out and get your tickets now because they're on a first come, first serve basis.
All right. You can find Ravi everywhere at Ravi M. Gupta. You can find me everywhere at Jason Kander. Please leave a 5-star review. Thank you to the Midas Mighty. And remember, we all have a platform. Make sure to use yours today.